Welcome to another science exploration. When we talk of life cycle of a flowering plant, then pollination comes as a very important process in its life cycle. It is a vital step in plant reproduction because it allows fertilization to take place. After fertilization, seeds are formed, and these seeds can grow into new plants. Today, we will discuss about pollination in a flowering plant, what it is, the different ways in which it can happen, and the different agents, such as insects, wind, water, etc., through which it can happen. So please join me as we explore this important process in a plant's life cycle.
Okay, so let's dive right in. What exactly is pollination? Well, simply put, it's the transfer of these tiny grains called pollen. They move from the male part of a flower, which we call the anther, over to the female part, known as the stigma. Think of it like a microscopic delivery service, and it absolutely has to happen for the plant to make its seeds. No delivery, no seeds.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. Think about it. Plants are rooted in the ground, right? They can't exactly get up, stretch their roots, and walk over to another flower to hand-deliver their pollen. So they have to use some pretty brilliant methods to move this pollen around. It's honestly amazing how nature figures this all out. First up, let's look at a method called self-pollination. Imagine a plant doing all the work completely by itself. In this super cool process, the pollen moves from the anther directly to the stigma, right inside the exact same flower. Since both the male and female parts are sitting right there together in one beautiful bloom, the plant doesn't even need another flower to get the job done. Pretty neat, huh?
But wait, there's actually another way this can happen. Sometimes, pollen travels to a completely different flower, but that flower is still growing on the very same plant. Even though the pollen moved next door, so to speak, this is still considered self-pollination. Why? Because the pollen and the flower it lands on belong to the exact same plant family.
All right, let's move on to our next method, which is a little more adventurous. This one is called cross-pollination. This happens when pollen travels between flowers on completely different plants of the same species. Picture two separate hibiscus bushes growing on opposite sides of your garden. The pollen from one bush takes a grand trip all the way over to the flowers on the completely different bush.
So, you might be wondering, why is cross-pollination so awesome? Well, mixing the pollen from two different plants creates way more variety in the baby plants that will eventually grow from those seeds. This wonderful mix is kind of like a secret superpower. It helps the new plant survive much better in all sorts of different environments, different soils, and changing weather conditions. It's basically nature's perfect way of keeping plants strong. Now remember earlier when we talked about how plants can't walk? Because they're stuck in one place, they rely on special delivery helpers that we call agents. These agents are the incredible forces of nature that step in to do the heavy lifting. They pick up the pollen from one place and safely drop it off at another. Let's meet this amazing team, shall we?
First up on our team of agents, we have the insect helpers. Insects like buzzing bees, beautiful butterflies, and even shiny little beetles just love to visit flowers to drink their sweet nectar. And this brilliantly illustrates how nature works together. You see, while the insect is busy snacking, the pollen secretly sticks to their fuzzy bodies. Then, when they fly to the very next flower for another snack, they deliver that pollen right to the stigma. Fact is, a single bee can carry thousands of pollen grains on just one trip. No way, right?
But hey, insects aren't the only ones who love a sweet treat. We've also got bird helpers. Birds, like the speedy little hummingbird, visit flowers for a quick sip of nectar too. As they poke their long beaks deep into the flower, pollen accidentally brushes all over their beaks and heads. When they zip over to the next bloom, they carry that pollen right along with them. Just a flying pollen delivery service.
Now, what if there are no hungry animals around? Well, the wind acts as an invisible helper. For tons of plants, a strong gust of wind, or even just a gentle breeze, is all it takes. The wind simply blows those very light, tiny pollen grains right through the air. It carries them on a magical flying journey from one flower to another.
And we definitely can't forget about our water helpers. Think about some special plants that live their whole lives underwater. They obviously don't have bees or wind down there to help them out, right? Instead, the water currents actually carry the pollen around, washing it gently and perfectly from one underwater flower to the next.
Now, because flowers need to attract their helpers, especially those animal ones we talked about, they put on what we can think of as special, flashy costumes. Let's look really closely at the amazing features these flowers use to invite insects and birds to come visit them. It is quite a show. Flowers pollinated by animals are usually the brilliant superstars of the garden.
They're brightly colored and often smell absolutely amazing, all just to grab the attention of passing helpers. And to make sure those helpers stay a while and actually do their job, they produce delicious sweet nectar as a yummy food reward.
Once the helpers arrive, the flower has to help them find the prize. These flowers often have large petals or special shapes that act kind of like glowing runway lights at an airport. These amazing shapes and hidden patterns guide the birds and insects right to the nectar. This makes absolutely sure they brush past the reproductive parts of the flower on their way in.
And speaking of that pollen, it is specially made for traveling on animals. The pollen in these flowers isn't smooth at all. It's specially designed to be sticky or rough. It acts a whole lot like tiny pieces of Velcro. This way, it easily grabs onto the pollinator's fuzzy little body, holding on incredibly tight for the bumpy ride over to the next flower. All right, now let's shift gears and look at wind-pollinated flowers. Notice how completely different they look compared to the showy, colorful animal-pollinated ones we just saw. Because they don't need to impress any bees or birds to come visit, they wear a completely different kind of outfit.
I mean, the wind doesn't care at all about tasty snacks or sweet perfumes, so these flowers don't even bother making them. Wind-pollinated flowers are usually quite small and pretty dull-colored, often just plain green or brown. They don't make strong smells or nectar. Instead, they are incredibly efficient and save all their energy from making pollen. And their pollen, it's completely different too. Instead of being rough and sticky like Velcro, they make huge, massive amounts of extremely light, dry pollen. They need it to be as light as dust so the wind can easily snatch it up and carry it far, far away across the fields without it clumping together. To make sure the wind can do its job perfectly, these flowers have some very unique shapes. Their anthers actually hang right outside the flower so the wind can blow the pollen away easily. And their stigmas, the part that catches the pollen, are often big, exposed, and very feathery. They act just like giant nets to trap that floating pollen right out of the moving air. In conclusion, pollination is a very important process in the life cycle of flowering plants. It can happen within the same flower, between flowers of the same plant, or between flowers of different plants of the same species. Different flowers have different features depending on whether they are pollinated by insects, birds, wind, water, or other agents. If you find the video informative, please like and subscribe. Thanks!